All right, let's jump right in. Most of us, when we think of conflict at work, we see it as a fire that needs to be put out, like right now. But what if that's totally wrong? What if the goal isn't to have a workplace with zero conflict, but to have one that's really, really good at it? Well, that's what we're going to talk about. How to harness the energy of disagreement and actually turn it into your team's secret weapon.
You know, this quote just hits the nail on the head. That quiet you might be thinking of as harmony? That's usually the sound of great ideas being held back or real problems just festering under the surface. The real danger isn't the argument you can see and hear, it's the one you can't.
And that's exactly why we're here. We're going beyond just the theory to give you a real, practical playbook. Our goal isn't to somehow magically get rid of conflict. No way. It's to teach you how to use it, how to transform those tense moments into breakthroughs for your team.
So, first things first, we have to completely reframe this whole idea. Conflict isn't a threat to your team, it's untapped potential. Seriously, it's the raw material for growth, and your ability to work with it is what's going to separate you from just being a good manager and becoming a truly great one.
And just look at the benefits when you get this right. When you manage conflict well, it's like a spotlight. It shows you the broken processes before they cause a real disaster. It forces people to challenge their assumptions, which, by the way, is the engine of all innovation. And maybe the most important part, when people learn to disagree respectfully, it builds this incredible foundation of trust. It actually makes the team stronger.
So how do you actually do this? Well, before you jump in with any technique, you've got to diagnose the situation. I mean, think about it. A doctor wouldn't give you medicine without figuring out what's wrong first, right? It's the exact same idea here. You have to understand the terrain before you can even think about navigating it. And one of the best diagnostic tools out there is the Thomas Kilmann instrument, or TKI for short. The easiest way to think about it is like an X-ray for your team's dynamics. It helps you see how people naturally handle conflict, and it's all based on two key ideas. Assertiveness, that's how much you want to get your way, and cooperativeness, that's how much you want to help the other person get theirs.
Now, those two dimensions give us these 5 different modes of handling conflict. And here's the absolute most important thing to understand. Not a single one of them is good or bad. They're just tools. For instance, competing sounds aggressive, but in a real emergency where you need a quick decision, it's essential. On the flip side, accommodating might be perfect to preserve a crucial relationship for a bigger win down the road. The real art of being a great manager is knowing which tool to pull out of the toolbox for any given situation.
But having a map is totally useless if you don't have the right mindset. Before any of these techniques will work, you have to nail these 3 principles. First up, radical neutrality. Your job isn't to be the judge, it's to be the facilitator. That leads right into number 2, genuine curiosity. Stop making assumptions and start asking real questions like, hey, help me understand where you're coming from. And finally, none of this works without self-awareness. You have to manage your own emotional triggers first, because your emotional state is the one thing you actually have control over.
Okay, so with that foundation set, we can finally get into the toolkit. Let's look at some super practical, repeatable scripts that you can use to bring the tension down and actually open the door to a productive conversation.
This right here is probably the single most powerful shift you can make. You statements, you always, you never, they're like throwing a match on gasoline. They're just accusations and they put people on the defensive instantly. But I statements, they take ownership of your experience. It's not about blame, it's about impact. And that one little switch can change the entire dynamic of a conversation.
And here's the formula to build a perfect one. It's so simple, but it works. You start with a specific thing that happened when you check your phone while we're in our one-on-ones. Then you state your feeling. I feel unheard. Then explain the impact, because it makes me feel like my updates aren't that important. And finally, you make a clear request. I need for us to both be fully present for these 30 minutes. See how that just takes all the accusation out of it and puts a solvable problem on the table instead? It's a game changer.
Okay, now, for those really intense, emotionally charged conversations, you need a lifeline. That's what the AEDR method is, and you have to do these steps in order. First, you just acknowledge what you're hearing from them. Then, you name the emotion you're sensing. This is huge. It validates their feelings and takes a ton of the heat out of the situation. Only then, once they feel heard, can you ask about their underlying desire and guide them toward a concrete request. That sequence is everything. You cannot solve for the future until you've validated the emotion in the present. That's the secret sauce.
So far, pretty much everything we've talked about is reactive. Tools for dealing with conflict once it's already here. But the best managers, they aren't just great firefighters.
They're architects. They actually design systems that prevent the fires from starting in the first place.
And that's the real question, isn't it? All the techniques in the world are great, but they just can't compare to the power of prevention. So how do we do it? How do we build an early warning system for our teams?
Well, the answer is the proactive one-on-one. And look, this is not just another status update. The key is the employee owns the agenda, and your job is simply to listen. By consistently asking about these three things, progress, people, and purpose, you start to uncover all those little frictions, those small interpersonal issues or process gaps, long before they have a chance to blow up into major conflicts.
So let's bring this all home. When you start to master these tools, and more importantly, this mindset, your role as a manager fundamentally changes. You stop being a firefighter.
And this is your evolution. You're no longer just a problem solver who hands down answers. You become a catalyst who empowers your team to find their own, better way forward. You become an architect of psychological safety, a true facilitator of innovation. You learn to turn that everyday friction into a powerful strategic advantage.
So, remember this. Conflict is going to happen. It's inevitable. Your team's next disagreement is probably right around the corner. The only real question is, how are you going to see it? As just another problem you have to solve, or as a real opportunity to be seized? The choice is yours.